Hey guys, Indian video game collector Xbox 360 patron over here, and today I would like to talk about the next gen consoles, or effectively the PS5 and Xbox Series X. And essentially, I wanted to cover a very important topic, which I have been asked quite a lot in the comments, which is, would I be buying these consoles on launch? If not, then when would I be buying these? I've had a good track record of not going for consoles during the launch window. I generally try to get them 1.5 to 2 years down the line. A Scorpio was the only launch edition that I bought at launch. Other than that, I generally wait for new hardware to be stabilized. Here I've compiled a list of 4 to 5 points as to why I would not be getting these consoles on day one. Maybe few of these points would hold good for you as well. So sit back, relax, and take a look at this video. Yeah, so as I was talking earlier, there are a lot of reasons why we should not invest in a new hardware at launch. So the very first factor is the price factor, wherein I would basically like to talk about the cost of the consoles and the games associated. So historically, we have seen the PS4 launch for around 40,000 in 2014, and likewise PS3 was launched at around the same price mark, and Xbox One as well was around that mark, if I remember correctly, when it launched finally on Amazon. And not to mention that all the launch titles at least were close to 3.5k to 4.5k back then, and it's going to be worse from what we have seen. And this is especially true after the GST or the goods and services tax has been applied on these consumer electronics. Yeah, but from the past, we have seen that the prices do come down after some time. I mean, the price drops are not significant, but then again, at least you end up saving some money if you buy a console later on. Needless to say, you also have an opportunity to buy it secondhand if you don't get a console on launch. The second point is availability of games as well as the launch titles or the launch lineup for the consoles. So effectively, these games are just a demonstration of what these systems can do. They might be graphically superior than the existing generation games, but then again, these experiences are generally short. And if you look at the list of Xbox One X launch titles, I'm not sure if Halo is going to be a launch title as of now, or it's going to be delayed. So at least on the Xbox front, I don't see any first party titles being available on launch. So just does not make sense to get an Xbox Series X on launch. Now coming to PS5, we do have Spiderman Miles Morales, and Ratchet and Clank was recently announced as a launch window title. So yeah, these two are some decent games for the platform, but then again, getting a platform for just these two games does not really seem to be a good deal. So I would rather wait for a good Gears of War game to be launched to get an Xbox, or a new God of War game, or a new Uncharted to be launched to get a PS. As well as definitely, I mean, I'm all excited for Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man Miles Morales. But just for these two games, or at least just these two games, are not compelling enough for me to get a PS5. So the launch titles this time around aren't really great. They're just going to be a graphical demo. And from what I've seen in the recent past, I feel that the titles during the end of the life cycle of the console are generally much more stellar in terms of performance and graphics, as well as the stories. So the examples being Last of Us on the PS3, and most recently Last of Us 2 and Ghost of Tsushima on the PS4. Gears 5 on the Xbox One X. Now, coming to the third and most important point about buying a new hardware on launch, and this might be applicable to other things like notebooks, laptops, mobile phones, and other consumer electronics as well. But I'll be talking specifically in the context of consoles. So in the recent past, we've seen a lot of issues with launch hardware of consoles. So for example, PS3 had this yellow light of death problem, wherein it would not boot. Xbox had the infamous red ring of death, wherein the console would again stop booting up. Yeah, so coming to the recent past, we have seen PS4s arriving dead on arrival during the PS4 launch in 2013, which was dubbed as the blue light of death, wherein the PS4s would just not boot, and this was really bad during the launch. And as recent as the Xbox One X launch or the Scorpio Edition launch, I do remember a lot of people getting DOA consoles which wouldn't power up. So thankfully, touch wood, my Xbox One X or my Scorpio Edition did not have that issue. Luckily for me, so for few people, it worked out by swapping the power cables from One S to the One X, but thankfully I didn't have to do that. It does not seem prudent to get a hardware during the launch window, as there might be a lot of issues that will be found out and ironed out later on in the next revisions. So, having said that, what I do like to prefer is to go ahead and get a second revision of the console whenever that is out. So, what that would mean would be the PS3 Slim or the PS3 Super Slim in case of PS3s. So, in case of Xbox 360, that would be an Xbox 360 Slim or Xbox 360e. In case of Xbox One, that would be the Xbox One S, or and in case of PS4, it would be the PS4 Slim. So, having said that, the benefits that we get with the hardware revision is generally it is much more power efficient, it is less noisier, as well as they would have ironed out all the chinks that they would have figured out uh, during the launch window. Needless to say, the revision is slightly cheaper than the launch price of the console of the launch edition. Especially as we have seen in the past iteration. So it's not just that the same series of hardware is being launched as a slimline, but we have also seen mid-generation releases like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X in the last gen. So there might be a case that we might see mid-gen releases or mid-gen jumps in the next generation as well. Maybe a PS5 Pro or a Xbox Series XY or whatever they would like to call it. So having said that, it just does not make sense to shell out so much money during launch when you do not have a lot of good titles to play. But what I see is that a lot of people just end up getting these new consoles to get on the hype train, or they just end up buying these due to peer pressure or the new Call of Duty games supporting online mode only on the new console. I mean, there might be a lot of other reasons, like all of their friends shifting onto the new console. But for me, since I prefer single player campaigns whenever I rarely do play them, this is not a very compelling reason to shift to a new console. I like to collect limited edition consoles, so it makes much more sense to save up and invest in buying a limited edition console later on, and not getting the launch edition as of now. And the next thing is I do have an immense backlog of games on the current gen as well as the previous gen as well as the PS2 generation. So I mean, these are good enough to last me a lifetime. So I don't really see myself getting a new console in the next 2 years until unless one of those games that I mentioned earlier or their limited editions come out. Now coming to the last and final point, and this might appeal to the PC master race or the PC owners. So if you have a PC, it just does not make sense to get an Xbox Series X or a Xbox One for that matter. The reason being, all the games that are effectively that have been released on Xbox One till now, barring I think one of the Forza Motorsport titles, have already been ported to the PC. And the upcoming Xbox Series X games would be available on PC as well as part of a simultaneous release. Needless to say, what Xbox has promised is that any first party titles that they would be releasing in the next 2 years would also be available on Xbox One and Xbox One X. So having said that, it just does not make sense to get a XSX in the next 2 years. Even though a lot of titles have been delayed, I think Halo has been delayed, which happened to be the only decent launch title on that system. So Microsoft and Xbox have actually moved Joseph Staten to Halo Infinite to ensure that the game gets shipped on time. But still, I feel that a half-baked game is much worse than a fully polished game, even if it is delayed. And Forza Motorsport has been delayed. There are no talks of releasing it on the Xbox One. So having said that, if you have a decent PC which can play all these games, or at least if I had those and I was not a collector, I would have steered clear of the Xbox Series X line of consoles. Now coming to PS5, most of the titles will be third-party titles or multi-platformers, which would be readily available on PC, Xbox Series X, as well as PS5. So again, if you have a PC, what you're actually going to miss out on are the Sony first-party exclusives and nothing else. Yeah, so coming to Sony first party titles now, Sony has released few of the games recently like Horizon Zero Dawn and Detroit Become Human on the PC. As well as today in their financial report, they have mentioned or rather confirmed that they would be continuing to do so to port their games on the PC. Albeit this would not be a simultaneous release, but they do want that profit share or of the pie from the PC consumers. So they would be doing this maybe towards the end of their generation or a couple of years after these games have been launched on the new console. So we might definitely see Sony first party titles on the PC in the near future. We might be seeing more of them. From what I have seen in India, the PS4 exclusives, they lose their value quite literally quite early, and the reason being, since we end up getting these bundles with 3 games, 4 games, and these games being available so freely in market. I remember that Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted 4, and a lot of other games were close to 1500 to 1600 a year after launch, new and used. You can find these for somewhere around 300 to 400 in a second hand market. So having said that, if you have a PC, it just does not make any sense to get these consoles at launch or maybe even later. And secondly, if you're not the type to get hyped or get into peer pressure, trust me, there is no reason to get a new console on launch. At least this generation, you won't be missing out on anything. um, you can sit back, relax, and play all these games a couple of years later, maybe on your PC or maybe on the first revision of these consoles. Needless to say, you would be saving up on a lot of money by doing that, because by that time there would be second-hand consoles from the original revision, from the original launch, as well as there would be a second-hand video game market locally, and the games would have been much, much cheaper. So finally, this is my take on it. I do not see myself investing into Xbox Series X or a PS5 for the next 2 years, unless I see a new limited edition, which I really, really want. So I would rather try to get a Xbox Series X or a PS5 from US if I travel anytime soon in the next or next to next year in a post-COVID world. But till then, I would be enjoying all the games that I currently own. There are a lot of games that I haven't played on Xbox One, Xbox 360, PS3, and PS4 Pro. So right now I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima on my PS4 Pro, and prior to that I have enjoyed a lot of games on my PS3. So I played the Unfinished One, I played Spec Ops, and I played Binary Domain, I played the Puppeteer. Rather, I'm playing the Puppeteer on my PS3. So there is a lot that you can actually do with older consoles as well. So if you don't have a current gen console right now, I would suggest you pick those when the next gen consoles finally launch. So effectively get a PS4 when the PS5 launches, after the PS5 launches, or get a Xbox One or a Xbox One X after the Xbox Series X launches, since the prices would come down for these commodities. As well as what you can do is you can always grab a Xbox One or a PS4 secondhand, or import them from the US, whichever way. So they'll be much cheaper than the new consoles. Plus, the games would get much cheaper and would be widely available for a few years to come. So you can satiate your gaming hunger by playing on these consoles. So that would be another plus point. Like if you really want to get a console, get one gen lower console at a cheaper rate, with cheaper games, play them for a few years, and then get into the next gen. So that's all from me for this video. And definitely, if you like the video, do share it in your WhatsApp groups and with your friends. And if you have any suggestions for me, or if you feel there are some more points that I could have added or I could have contributed to this video, do let me know below in the comments. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So this is me, Xbox 60 patron or Indian video game collector, signing off. Have a good day and stay safe.